The Narrows hike in Zion National Park. It's truly an unforgettable experience as you hike several miles up the Virgin River, surrounded by steep canyon walls. In this video, you can follow along with us as we hike the Narrows during the month of March of 2021. We're going to talk about the gear you should wear, what to expect on this hike, and some tips to make this hike more enjoyable for you. If you're planning to do this Narrows hike, the first thing you need to do is check if the shuttle is operating daily before you come visit the park. When we did this hike on a Tuesday in March, the shuttle was not operating daily, so we could drive right through the canyon up into that parking lot at the Temple of Sinawava. If the shuttle's not operating, you want to go through the south entrance there near the town of Springdale, head north up the canyon, follow that scenic route all the way up to the Temple of Sinawava, and that's your parking lot. If the shuttle is operating, you should check the Park Service website a month or two in advance to see if you need to book a shuttle pass in advance. This year, because of COVID, you do need to book your shuttle pass in advance if the shuttle is operating on your day. But for us, we just drove right up there. We arrived at the parking lot around 6:30 a.m. Mountain Time, and the parking lot was about half full at that time on a Tuesday in early spring. We actually spent about an hour in the parking lot using the restroom and eating breakfast before doing the hike, and within that 1 hour, the parking lot was almost full by 7:30 a.m. So keep that in mind as well. If you are driving into the parking lot, make sure you get there early. Unless you're trying to do this hike later in the day, then you have a much lower chance of getting a parking spot, but you might have better conditions for the hike. So now that you know where this hike is located in Zion National Park, let's go back one day here and you can see us gearing up for this hike because the temperatures were about 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the air. The water temperature was very cold as well. We wanted to wear this dry gear and we rented it from Zion Outfitters, which is just before the pedestrian entrance to the park from the town of Springdale. I left a link to Zion Outfitters website below so you can check on rates for renting your gear. So we grabbed our gear from Zion Outfitter on Monday afternoon and we started the hike on Tuesday morning. We were in the parking lot, we got our gear all on so we would stay nice and dry and warmer. And once we were ready to go, got our stylish dry gear on, we started the hike. The first mile of this hike is called the Riverside Walk, and it's a paved 1 mile path that just takes you to a dead end, basically, where there are steps leading down to the Virgin River, where the real Narrows hike starts. After just about 1 mile, you reach the end of that pavement, go down into the Virgin River, and you start hiking up the Virgin River, and your feet will be soaking wet almost immediately. We just did the first water crossing, and my feet are already wet. The first feature along this Narrows hike that we noticed that we thought was pretty cool was the waterfall. And it's kind of like water running down this steep slope on your right side as you're going up the Virgin River. And that was about 1.44 miles in from the start. So about 0.44 miles from the pavement. And that's the first cool feature that we saw. Then you continue going in and around the bends of the canyon as the canyon's getting more and more narrow. You definitely need a walking stick on this hike. There are lots of large pebbles in the river. Once you make it just past 2 miles in the river, you'll come to a split. Alright, we made it to the split, where one side goes to Wall Street and the other side is like a more narrow canyon to a town. And
we educated ourselves so well on this.
Yeah.
Clearly.
The water right now is like 50 cubic feet per second discharge rate, so it's not that strong, and the highest it came up to was about our waist to get to this point. So it wasn't too bad today. I think that's why we got here pretty quickly. And that split to the right will take you down a narrower canyon with clearer water. So this is like a more of like a tributary, smaller little canyon, and that will take you all the way up to Orderville, Utah. And if you go to the left, you get to the famous Wall Street section of the Narrows, and that's the thing that everybody wants to see. But when we did this hike, we went to the right first, and there was nobody there, so that was awesome. And then we came back, went to the left, and it seemed like everybody was starting to go to the right. So we kind of got the best of both worlds there, where it was not crowded in either section after reaching the split because of the way that we did it. We've made it to the point in the hike where Nate is uncomfortable. He doesn't want to hike anymore, and he's sick of me taking pictures. So he runs ahead of me so that I can't stop him to take more pictures. We basically made one more bend around Wall Street and then decided to turn around at this big rock that we saw. And the hike back was not that much easier. I thought that going downstream would have been easier on the route back. However, it wasn't that much easier because there still were a lot of slippery boulders in the river that you had to be careful walking on, so I didn't think it was that much easier going back. Overall, hiking the Narrows was an epic experience. We ended up hiking about 8 miles round trip, and it took us closer to 5 hours to do the full hike from the truck all the way up the Narrows, going to the right and then to the left, coming all the way back to the truck. And we had a really hard time rating this hike because it was so unique and so different from every other hike we've done in the past. The things that we liked about this hike are the fact that you're in this narrow canyon, you're hiking upstream through the river, you have sheer cliffs on both sides of you going up the canyon walls, and it was pretty fun meandering over some of those boulders. And as you got up into the smaller canyon on the Orderville Canyon side, you could climb up some of those rocks as well, so it became kind of like a playground, and we really enjoyed this part of the hike. Things that we didn't like about this hike were the fact that we saw little wildlife. Because it's a very narrow river canyon, we only saw several of those water birds, and we saw one like half-dead trout swimming down the river, but that was it for the wildlife. We also didn't like that it was very cold, but you know, we did that to ourselves. It was the beginning of March in Zion National Park. What did you expect? So things we would do differently would be to come back later in the summer when it's warmer outside and we don't have to wear all of that dry gear, and also try to do this hike later in the day when some light actually filters down into the canyon, because we were in shadow the entire hike. After we made it back to the truck, we took off our dry gear and drove back to Springdale, where we returned our dry gear and then walked over to the brew pub to enjoy a nice beer.
We are back in the truck. Yay! Driving back to Springdale. to Zion Outfitters. We're going to return the gear.
Yep.
Definitely happy that we rented that.
Yes.
I mean, maybe we could have done it. Other people did it. There were a few people that did it.
I would say 95% of the people doing that hike had that gear on today.
They did.
Yeah,
they did.
The outside temperatures like in the 40s, 50s.
When we started, it was in the 40s.
Yeah, and you're in the shade for most of the hike. The water is very cold. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very happy. I even turned to you and said to you multiple times, I'm so happy that we rented that gear. And the walking stick, I would have fallen like 30 times if I did not have that walking stick.
So what did you want to talk about?
What are questions that people would want to know about this hike? Like, is it safe for kids? Depends, I would say. Depends. We saw a few kids at the beginning part of it.
I didn't see any kids.
Didn't see any kids under 10 after you go around that first big bend.
Yeah, and the problem is it gets deeper.
Mm-hmm. The deepest it was for us at when the discharge rate was about 50 cubic feet per second was up to our waist, like our hips maybe? Hips. Yeah. How would you rate this hike on a scale of 1 to 10?
Of what? Did I like it?
Yeah, just overall.
Or difficulty?
Overall.
Or
you can talk about each of those points. Go ahead.
I don't know. I'm not good at rating things. I wouldn't say it's terribly difficult, especially at the time that we did it.
I would agree.
With the water level.
I would say Angel's Landing is much more challenging.
Yeah, I mean the only thing is just you're walking with constant resistance.
Mm-hmm.
If the water was higher, then I think that would make it more difficult.
Definitely, yeah.
But at the water level, I mean, a lot of the time it was around our ankles.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and there were some sections where you're out of the river completely.
Yeah. So I would say it's not terribly difficult.
I would say this hike stands out from so many other hikes because when can you hike up a river in a deep, narrow canyon? It's not a hike that you can do in a lot of places, so that makes it very interesting because it's something that we've never experienced before. But yeah, so from a wow factor of never doing something like this, that's pretty high.
And just like we talked about, I think it would have been cool to start off later in the day.
So we started around 7:30, and the sun was just starting to come in through at the end of as we were coming back, before we got to the pavement, we could start to see the sun coming into the canyon then, but before that we were in the shade the whole time.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be a little more fun later in the year.
But, I mean, we got here at 6:30 in the morning, and there were plenty of spots left, versus in the warmer months, it seems like it's a lot more competitive to find a spot. You've got to get up a lot earlier, so...
Yeah. And the
trade-offs.
one of the things that I was really excited about is that we could get a bunch of photos with just me or just you, with no one else in the photo, and the steep canyon walls on both sides. And it seems like that's harder to do in the summer as well when more people are here. So yeah, it definitely wasn't that crowded today. I can't complain about that.
We couldn't do that as much on the way out.
Right. Yeah, because
once we got to the fork, it seemed like a lot more people went to the left. We went to the right. Where there was pretty much nobody for a while.
Yeah, that was really nice. From a wildlife standpoint, maybe it's the time of year or the type of hike it is.
There's
going
none.
right to the canyon. Yeah, we saw one trout. Yeah,
hit my boot,
flopping around. He was half dead looking. Yeah, and then we saw some birds that I have to look up what species of bird that was.
Diving in the water.
They just dive in the water and swim, and then they come back up on a rock and they bounce their little bodies.
You really have to hike 6 miles.
I would say that the best part of the hike was the Wall Street section, honestly, because there were less people there, that you're in a more narrow canyon with steep walls coming up.
There were fewer people there.
Yeah. So for me, it was worth it to go to the Wall Street section.
I would say, yeah.
It's hard to compare to other hikes because
it's very different.
It's so different, yeah. So if you want a unique experience, that this is for you. This is awesome. I guess for safety, Wear something with ankle support because you are stumbling all over wet, slippery rocks the entire time. The walking stick is fantastic, as we said already.
Highly recommend a walking stick, even if you have perfect balance.
Yeah.
She is a gymnast.
Yes, and I couldn't.
And there were still several times. I mean, we saw people with no walking sticks.
Yeah, they were much slower.
Yeah.
Overall, hiking the Narrows was pretty impressive. We never did a hike like this before, so we really enjoyed it. Before you do this hike yourself, we recommend that you check the National Park Service website for Zion so you can see what the shuttle situation is like. And we also recommend checking out the USGS discharge data for the Virgin River before hiking, just to see what the river is going to be like when you do this hike. Also keep in mind that throughout the year, conditions change greatly along this hike, and there's a potential for flash floods, and you definitely do not want to get caught up in one of those, so always check the weather before you go. To find more helpful information about hiking the Narrows in Zion National Park, you can click on the links that I've provided below this video in the description section. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our fun national park adventures.
Okay.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.